I'm Victoria Alexander. I'm the owner of Realty, a Brooklyn-based boutique real estate firm that I started over 17 years ago to defy the stereotypes associated with real estate in New York City. I am a matchmaker, therapist, coach, whatever it takes to help you, guide you along this process into becoming a first-time home buyer and owning your own home. Because nobody wants to be a renter forever here if you're planning on staying in New York. First thing you need to do after you decide you want to buy is assemble your dream team, get pre-approved by a bank, and hire a lawyer and a buyer's real estate agent. That would be me. I've been working with Rashida. Rashida helped me buy my house in 2010. So 12 years when she was my lawyer. And we have done countless deals before that as well, because I picked her because she was so great with my clients to represent me. So Rashida, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashida Sadiq. I am a real estate attorney. I have been practicing going on 20 years in April, so quite some time. I represent lots of first-time buyers. My main office is in downtown Brooklyn, but I represent clients in all of the boroughs, including Northern New Jersey, also in Long Island and Suffolk County. I represent you both whether you're purchasing a house, co-op, or condo. Have another partner that works with me as well, and an associate attorney. And I look forward to giving you information on basically, the things that you should be, as you think about this home buying process, what your lawyer should be doing for you and representing you correctly and as you go through this process.
Thanks, Rashida. So again, like I said, my job and my expertise have been mounting for over 17 years, and my job is really to protect the buyer from the unknowns of this process and help you avoid negotiation pitfalls and really give you the confidence and education you need to make a decision. I'll help you find your dream Brooklyn home and help you match and figure out what that looks like, because people start this process saying, I want this, this, or this. And at the end of the day, after we've talked and worked it all through, it doesn't usually look like what they told me on their first initial phone call. So helping you figure out what that is. And my services come as no cost to you. I'm paid by the seller, the seller broker and the buyer's broker split their commission. And these are the three people that you need to get things started: a buyer's agent, an attorney, and a mortgage professional. Having a buyer's agent is important because they have a fiduciary responsibility to you, and the seller's broker has a fiduciary responsibility to the seller. So when you walk into a listing and you see an agent there, that agent represents the seller and they're the best interest of the seller. Do not be confused about that role and their intentions. And you want to interview all of us and make sure that we're the right match for you and that we're going to be the right person that you can hear advice from and guide you through this process. So pick advisors that have industry relationships for a long time, that, especially in New York City, it's super important. Do not hire your uncle as your lawyer. Do not hire your aunt that is a lawyer or mortgage professional. You want to have interviewed, seasoned experts that you have vetted to make sure that they are the right person for you and that they're competent and experienced enough to guide you through this process. That is my advice. It doesn't have to be me. It needs to be those things. So why buy now? Rents, even interest rates are high, rents are still high. Rents are only going to get higher. They're not going to come down. If you plan on staying in New York City, it is in your best interest to get into owning a property so that you can stay here with security. You get to have your own design. You get to have long-term investment in yourself. You're always paying somebody's mortgage, either yours or your landlord's. Whose mortgage do you want to pay? Because you should be investing in yourself and building equity for yourself and securing a home for yourself here in New York City, if you plan on staying here for at least 5 years. The cost between renting and buying has never been closer, and that's still true. Even with these high interest rates, you're not married to that interest rate or that mortgage product. You are married to the property. And at a time like this in the market is one of the best times to invest in New York because prices have come down even with interest rates going up. and they level themselves out over time, and you'll be able to refinance in the future. I'm going to send you, Farah's going to put a link in the chat for the rent to buy matrix developed by the New York Times, where you can put in some specific calculated numbers about your current rent now and what your mortgage could possibly be, and seeing if buying makes financial sense for you, as well as emotional and mental for you. So now your team is assembled. You've got those big three people: your lawyer, your mortgage professional, and your buyer's agent. You might need some other people like a contractor, an architect, inspector. We have those resources for you, and we'll be able to give you a list of a couple for you to interview, but you need to make sure that you have the first three, which is the buyer's agent, your lawyer, and your mortgage professional. Financing. This is usually where Lisa speaks. Rashida, do you want to start it off, and I can jump in if I need to?
Sure. So clearly I'm not Lisa, but I've worked with Lisa, many times in the last couple of years. Additionally, I've worked with many clients that are purchasing. So one of the first things that you need when you're starting, obviously, one of the first things that you need is to make sure that you're qualified if you're getting a mortgage. And typically Victoria will explain that most of the times you're not even able to go and view a property without having pre-approved. That's what your loan officer, your mortgage person will do for you. They'll look at your, they'll ask you for certain information, and then they'll say, okay, based on what you provided to them, you're qualified for this amount of mortgage, so that you know what type of properties that you can look at, whether it's a co-op or a condo or a house. So you have your parameters on what you should look for. And that tells you how much you're going to be putting down. Standard in New York, I guess the standard is that 10% on signing. Overall, you're doing an 80% mortgage, 20% down payment. However, there are various programs that clients have used in the past. There's 3.5% down, 5% down, 10% down. So depending on what funds you have, you should always speak with your loan officer to see what type of mortgage programs that they have out there for financing. For co-ops, typically, you would see a lot of the co-ops, they do want the standard 20% down, but in the different boroughs, especially in Brooklyn, you can find co-ops that will take a 10% down, and they will allow you to do 90% financing. Or I've seen them especially in Queens as well. But once again, first step, always speaking with your loan officer to find out what you're qualified for, making sure you're pre-approved and knowing what type of products they're out there. There's different types of financing. There's a conventional mortgage. There's also FHA mortgage, and then there's Sony Mae, which is State of New York Mortgage Association. Those conventional is kind of like, you're putting down your regular 20%, 80% financing. FHA, you may be looking at 3.5% financing or 5% financing. So you're able to the bank has a little bit more flexibility on the type of products that they can do. Sony Mae is State of New York Mortgage Association. They have their specific requirements, and sometimes they have products for first-time buyers. So that's another type of loan product that a loan officer can speak to you about. And obviously, I'm sure Lisa, she's familiar with all of these types of products. But as you start thinking about looking for properties, you do want to find out what type of products they're out for first-time buyers.
So this is the first place to start. I know that people love to go on StreetEasy or Zillow first, but really you need to understand your buying power, and that's how much a bank is willing to give you a loan. There's a couple things that are important as the end of the year rolls in. If you're filing your taxes and you want to buy in 2023, you need to communicate to your accountants that that is your goal for this year. And so there might be some structuring of your taxes especially if you're self-employed, and what that looks like, so that you can make sure you look the best to a bank when submitting your paperwork to get approved for the loan. So it's important to talk to your accountant, and also Lisa will talk to you about that as well, how to change some line items around so it looks like you make maybe a little bit more for or categorizing things correctly so that you're not undervaluing what your real income is. So that's super important. Make sure to hire, like I said before, make sure you're hiring New York City experts, because it does change when you're doing financing for a co-op. You want someone that's very familiar for financing in co-ops, because they are scrupulous in looking over your paperwork, understanding the amount of co-op, I'm having a brain fart on the name of the sponsors and how many sponsor units are still in the building. Because that's important. If it's more than 50%, you're going to have a really hard time getting a conventional loan through certain banks, unless the bank has already pre-approved or has mortgages in the building already. So understanding the different challenges of buying a co-op and working with a bank that's very familiar in New York City co-ops. Do not call Quicken. Do not call Rocket Mortgage. Those people cannot guide you through the co-op purchase process. And you're going to end up having to find a new mortgage, a new bank in the middle of the process. And it's going to cost you time and money and a headache. You have to get 2 appraisals. You want New York City experts. I cannot push this point more, that is an important part of this process. You'll need a bunch of different documents. Farah's going to drop a link in the chat about the documents you'll need to get pre-approved, and some good basic overview of mortgage types and resources and alternatives for getting the 20% down, because we all know that that's a real challenge for most people to collect that, collect that sound savings, save for that down payment money. So you're ready to buy. You want to ask yourselves a couple questions. What's your timing? Do you have a lease that is going to expire? Are you going month to month right now? What's your budget? Is your family structure already laid out? Do you have a plan for that? And what are your lifestyle choices? Are you somebody that likes to walk out their door and have everything right there? Or do you want to live like I live in Red Hook? Can't walk out my door and find everything I need here. Need to get in my car to even get up to the subway or ride my bike there. So you want to understand what lifestyle choices you want to have. What are your lifestyle needs that are going to suit a purchase, because you are married to this place a lot longer than you are a renter. And if you decide, I can't move away from the park, this is the most important thing for me, I go running every day, that's an important part of the search process. So timing, 1 to 3 months versus 5 years. Some people take a really long time. You can call and talk to us at any point. If you're not going to buy something for a couple years, we still want to talk now to help prepare you for that process. School district, if that's important to you, real estate brokers can't tell you what school district properties are in. And how long do you plan on living there? And does your commute matter? Do you work from home now? Are you going to always work from home? That could change. So taking that into consideration. So next slide, finding your dream home. And your dream home, a lot of it has to do with building typology. Farah's going to put a link in the chat about the types of housing that is in New York City. There's townhouses, right? You want to buy a whole house. You want to buy a condo in a townhouse. Most brownstones are in, say, Park Slope, Cobble Hill, Carroll Gardens, Prospect Heights, Bed-Stuy. If you want to be in a co-op, you want a doorman and an elevator, Brooklyn Heights, Prospect Heights. If you want to live in a brand new fancy building, downtown Brooklyn, Williamsburg. So understanding what building typologies are available to you and matching them with neighborhoods you'd also want to live in, and the kind of amenities that those buildings offer. Do you want a pool? Do you want a gym in your building? Again, new construction. You're not going to find a gym in a lot of co-ops unless they've converted one of the basement rooms downstairs and just put maybe a treadmill or something in, and it's like 5 little machines. Is that going to suffice for you? Or do you want something that has like a yoga room? Thinking about what's important to you and what you need to have as in building amenities and matching those amenities to the building typology around Brooklyn is part of this process. And one of the first things that you will have to go through. I ask people to make their 5 list of deal breakers and realize you can only have then 3 of those things on that list. And then understanding what your closing costs are going to be. It's about 1 to 3% for co-ops and about 3 to 5% for condos. And new constructions can have something called transfer taxes in them. that will make it a lot more expensive, but in the long run, you're buying a product that will have more appreciation value over time, depending on the price point and the building. But usually a lot of people have made out on those being the first to purchase a new construction. There's some other headaches to buying a new construction, making sure that there is enough other buyers. You can't start closing. Lisa, maybe, Rashida, maybe you can talk about this a little bit about buying a new construction and what that looks like, and the financing part of it, about having other buyers committed and in contract so you can start closing.
Okay, so yeah, new construction is a little bit, if you're looking at a new construction condo specifically, is different than if you're buying an existing condominium buying from an owner, because they have certain requirements. You're basically going into contract prior to the most times the construction being completed, the certificate of occupancy being done for the building, and also all of the units being closed or in contract. So when you're looking at financing from that, you should be speaking with your loan officer to find out, obviously they should be familiar with new construction, because some banks will require a certain amount of units to be in contract before they're able to close. They have certain requirements regarding the insurance and timelines. A lot of time for new construction as well, depending on where they are with the process, you may be looking at closing in a few months versus 60 days, or you may be looking at a year or so. Your attorney will always, good attorney will also make sure that you understand your timeframes, and also if there's a kind of like a drop dead date in there to get you out of contract if you're not closed by a certain time period. When you're locking in your rate, since it's new construction, you always, obviously, you typically won't be locking in your rate at the time, because once again, it can be a year from your, you may be a year into contract. Closing costs for new construction, as Victoria had mentioned, are slightly higher than if you're looking at a for sale by an owner transaction, because typically they put the transfer taxes on the purchaser's side. You're paying for the sponsor attorney fee. There's what they call as working capital, which is kind of like a reserve fund, and some other fees that they put in for new construction. But all of that you will know ahead of time when your attorney is doing due diligence. And a lot of times they also, when you're negotiating the offer, they'll tell you this is what, can be, you can try to negotiate certain things, or they'll say, hey, these are the costs that you typically are paying if for this particular condominium building.
Can you imagine being in contract for over a year, not knowing when you will close, and having your money tied up and still being stuck in your apartment, even though maybe you probably told your landlord you're buying an apartment? It happens. So really understanding the timeline and their filings with the state and city to make sure that you're actually aware of what that will look like for you. So where do you start looking? Where do you find these properties? We have an internal database that is powered by REBNY, which is the Real Estate Board of New York, that takes all of the big firms like Corcoran, us, anybody that's a REBNY member, and puts all of the listings in one place. I still find StreetEasy to be very, very user-friendly. And the internet has changed everything. It's made it a lot more transparent. So if you're looking for something specific, it should be out there. Brokers are not allowed to covet and withhold information about listings anymore. There are rules and regulations around that. So you should be able to find the vast majority of listings, unless you're like looking in Canarsie or Long Island, on these platforms. So be wary of Zillow, Redfin. I would say, like, there's a realtor.com. Sometimes people do put bait and switch listings up. And that's why it's important to work with the real estate broker, because when you're messaging some people on Zillow or StreetEasy, it might have their name there, but doesn't mean that they are the seller's broker. It could mean that they are a buyer's broker trying to get leads. And you don't want the internet to pick this person for you. You want to make an educated choice about who you want to represent you, and make sure that they're the right expert for you. Somebody that is paying to be on other people's listings might not have enough of their own business, and this is a marketing strategy they're using to get new business. So we set up a search for our clients that aggregate all these results for you. And open houses are back. They were not happening in COVID for a while, but they are back, and you can organize private showings or you go to an open house. Right now, there's a little bit of a lull. Not a lot of people are putting listings on the market in December because most people are focused on the holidays. But I would say that, January, February, those new listings will start coming in, especially as we get into the spring. That is the busy time. I went over that the seller's agents has the best interest of the seller. So when you're going to the open house, they're representing the seller. And again, the buyer's broker represents you, and make sure to ask the right questions and develop a competitive market strategy for you, offer strategy for you to help sure you, when you do find the property that you fall in love with, that you will win it. I think that we went over where you search, and Farah's going to send you a link to the condo versus co-op personality quiz so you can understand like which type of property is good for you. So making an offer. There's several strategies, and you're going to work with your broker to devise what that strategy is. Has the property been on the market for months at a time, or all year possibly, or has it just listed and there was 30 other people at the open house? And is it the one, the gem, the rhinestone that been waiting to hit the market? Are you going to be aggressive about the perfect place, or are you going to be like, oh, it's okay, I'm in a leverage position, they're never going to sell that? Someone else will see that opportunity and jump on it. There are some diamonds in the rough that just don't come on the market that often, and you need to be prepared to maybe even overpay for something that checks all of your boxes. Because like I said, you're going to have that 5 list of deal breakers, or 5 lists of must-haves, and you're not going to get all of them. If this place has all of them, you have to have a different strategy, and for a place that just has one of them. I like to categorize these properties as your A, B, and C, and then we create a strategy around how you respond to finding the A, B, or C property. One of the main resources that working with a buyer agent provides is the relationship and knowledge with other brokers. A lot of the time, my clients have won their offers because I have a relationship with the seller's broker. They know me, we've done deals together. They know I'm straightforward and honest and direct about things, and that I know how to guide my clients to close the actual deal, because that's what their best interest, like I said, is for the seller, and they want to work with somebody that they know is a closer. So if they're accepting our offer, they know what kind of ethics I have and hard worker I am, so that they will know who their team member is, because we all work together in teams to make sure that this deal happens. We're negotiating terms for our clients to get them what they want, but really we're all just trying to negotiate to a place where we all feel good about the transaction. So that's why it's important you work with an agent to devise your negotiation strategy, and you take into account some of your contingencies, because you're going to make your offer contingent on things. Do you want to go over what contingencies people should put in their offer, Rashida?
Okay. So when you have a contract, the main contingency in the contract is your mortgage contingency, which means you've been pre-approved by Lisa or your loan officer prior to you seeing the property. You're going to be getting a mortgage. So always, definitely, one of the things you want to have in there is a mortgage contingency. What a mortgage contingency means is that if you're not able to get a mortgage after you've entered into contract, you've given your deposit, let's say the lender isn't able to qualify you, or the bank or the property doesn't appraise, or there's an issue with the co-op or the condominium, and the bank says, hey, we're not able to give you this mortgage, you have a right to cancel the contract and get the return of your deposit. So definitely one of the things you need to negotiate when you're putting in your offer is making sure that there is that contingency if you're going to be applying for a mortgage. One of the other things that you do pre-contract is making sure that you do an inspection. That's not a contingency that happens after you get into contract. It's something that you have to do prior to going into contract, whether it's a co-op or condo or a house. I definitely advise that you do an inspection, because the appraisal that the bank does is different than an engineer inspector that goes in to make sure the plumbing is working, looks for leaks, looks to see the electrical, looks to see if there's any broken windows and the appliances. The appraisal that the bank does after you get into contract and is part of your mortgage contingency is to really just determine the value of the property. At one point, people were negotiating whether there was going to be an appraisal contingency in the contract or not. But I definitely, if that is something that, because it's a hot property and you're thinking about taking it out of your, one of those negotiated terms, or you're overbidding. So you definitely want to have a conversation with your attorney, with your realtor on what it means to not have an appraisal contingency. Because once again, it's typically part of your mortgage, but sometimes that's something that can be negotiated and sometimes is taken out. Very rarely now, but it still is, it is still a term. Things that are also negotiated depending on closing dates. Most times if you're looking at a house, your closing date is on or about 60 days, if it's a condo as well. If you're looking at a co-op, it may be typically between 60 to 90 days because you have to get the co-op approval. So another term, sometimes whether the seller has to move right away, whether you need a longer time period to close. So sometimes negotiating the time period to close is also part of the terms that can be negotiated and put into the contract of sale.
So you put in an offer, you figure out what your strategy is. You understand what your contingencies are and what you're comfortable with. And we've all advised you, these are the pros and cons or the risks associated with going this route so that you understand how you move forward. If your offer is accepted, yay, congratulations. What happens then is the brokers carry something called deal sheets. The deal sheets go out to the lawyers. If you're doing an inspection, which hopefully your offer was contingent on inspection, we do that immediately because you will not sign the contract until the inspection is done. We have a list of inspectors that we like working with, and hopefully you'll be able to get one of them locked in pretty quickly. Some of them do not work on weekends. So it just depends on who you're talking to. And then you need to coordinate with the super or the management company to get access to the mechanicals. If everything goes great at the inspection, then your lawyer is going to be doing their due diligence, like Rashida went over, to make sure that the building, the property, there's no issues. If something comes up on the inspection, we're going to ask to have it fixed if we need it to be repaired before you move in. If something like your basic, like the stove wasn't working, we're going to red flag that so that we make sure that the stove will be working at closing. So that then after Rashida has done all of her due diligence and made sure that the building has insurance and that all of the I's are dotted and T's are crossed for the building, Rashida, you want to jump in on any of the due diligence stuff before you sign the contract?
Yeah, so definitely, especially if you're looking at co-ops or condos, one of the things that your attorney has to do prior to you enter into contract is, as Victoria had said, is what we call due diligence review. So that's reviewing the offering plan, the financials, the board meeting minutes. Because what I say is that you physically love the building, but you want to know what's behind the scenes and the finances for this co-op or the condominium, because that's really you're purchasing with a group of other people. You're going to be living with there. You're going to be paying as a group the maintenance for the building, the water charges. So you want to find out if there's increases in common charges in maintenance. That due diligence can take anywhere between about a week or more, depending on the building and the management company. But that's something that happens specifically for a co-op or a condo. If you're purchasing a house, there's not that due diligence that is done. Typically, it's just a contract review, making sure all of the terms are in there, such as your mortgage contingency, making sure that closing dates and things like that is all part of the contract of sale. And once due diligence is completed and the contract terms are finalized in the final contract of sale, that's when you sign the contract. In New York, it's just an offer until both parties sign the contract. So getting you into contract, getting it signed and the down payment provided, then the seller will sign. And that's when you're actually officially in contract and you move to the next step of getting your mortgage.
That's why we're all pushing and encouraging you to sign the contract as quick as possible. Of course, with your due diligence and everything done, because at any moment, somebody that came to the same open house that you did could have lost the bid on their A property, and this was their backup, and they come in and they put in an offer higher than yours, more competitive than yours, all cash, maybe even, and the seller can risk losing both deals because they don't know usually, about the second offer that's coming in, and they're taking a risk, and can jump and leave your deal or use that deal as leverage against you, saying, you know what, I know we agreed on $500,000, but I have somebody that coming and they're offering 520. I'm gonna go with that offer unless you also come with 520, because I've already agreed and committed to you, but I just can't leave $20,000 on the table. And so then you have to decide, is it worth $20,000 more to you? Do you feel okay about all of this? Are you willing to lose the property and go back to searching after you spent money on an inspection and gave in a deposit to Rashida for getting things started? There's lots of things that can happen. And so it's so important to do everything to work towards getting that contract signed if you're fully committed and to this property and want to make sure that nobody else can, snag it away from you. So now that you've done your due diligence and you've signed the contract and Rashida's gone over closing dates and timelines, all of that with you, you're now in contract. And so the heavy lifting is really on your attorney and your mortgage professional, unless you're buying a co-op, because at the same time as they're working, we are doing your beautifully presented board package that we will assemble and make sure that we are representing you in the best light to the co-op board, and just making sure that there's no reason that they could possibly ever say no to you, because they are the gatekeepers of who gets to live in this building. And so you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and have all of your information organized, and you're getting the bank everything as soon as possible, because you cannot submit your board package until you have your commitment letter. And that is so important to get that. And that's, the bank needs all of this information to get you to submit the co-op package and get interviewed by the co-op board. Then they have to approve you and communicate that information over to the bank and the management company, who then will work to get you the clear to close. So Rashida, do you want to talk about what you and Lisa are doing under contract?
Yeah. So now that you're in contract, there are certain time periods that you're working with. Typically, you would have 30 to 45 days for you to get your mortgage commitment. So you've been pre-approved already before you entered into contract. Now is the time for the bank to really kind of verify all the information. They have to get the appraisal done. They have underwriting, which is behind the scenes. They're gathering all of that information that you gave to your loan officer to say, okay, now we've basically crossed our T's, dotted our I's. We got the appraisal report. Now we can actually give you a firm commitment. A firm commitment is saying now you are really qualified and we can give you this mortgage because everything is ready. The property appraised, the co-op or the condominium has been approved by the bank. And that time period, as I said, typically is 30 to 45 days. Your loan officer is doing that in the background. Simultaneously, while that's happening, your attorney is ordering the title report on the property, because that also has to go to the bank. The title report or the lien search is basically making sure that there's no issues legally with the ownership of the property. If there's any open mortgages, if there's any judgments or tax liens that affect the seller or affect you, that comes up in that title report or that lien search. And that has to be given to the bank and also to your attorney so they can make sure that you're getting good title to the property. That title search typically takes roughly about 2 to 3 weeks. The lien search takes maybe about 2 to 3 days. A lien search is for a co-op. A title search is for a condo and a house. You're in contract. Your closing dates are simultaneously happening. Everything's kind of going at the same time. Typically, your attorney will explain to you your contract in New York is on or about closing date. Standard is on or about 60 days. That means you have a grace period of 30 days because you're working with all of these moving parts of getting your mortgage, of getting your co-op approval, getting the condo waiver, getting the title reports. So all of these things have to line up, and sometimes they don't line up exactly on 60 days. It may be 65, it may be 55. And of course, the seller has to move out. So that's why you have an on or about closing date in New York. So all of this is happening during that 60-day time period of close, 30 to 45 days for you to get your mortgage. Once you get your mortgage commitment, if you're getting a co-op, then as Victoria said, your realtor will put together that application with you, submit it to the board. And now the next step for a co-op is for you to wait for the board approval and for scheduling the closing once you have bank clearance. If you're getting a condo or a house, once you get your commitment, the next step is what we call bank clearance to close. And that can take anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what open items are still outstanding.
Okay, so the banks give you the clear to close, and Rashida's done her juggling act of organizing the closing. I take you within 48 hours to the property to do something called your final walkthrough, which is making sure that the property is being delivered to you in the condition that we all expect it to be. So whatever issues that came up in your inspection or before you bought it, or anything that they promised in the contract that they were going to repair, or if any of the appliances, because there's a commitment, even if we didn't note it, that all the appliances need to be working at the final walkthrough for the closing. So if everything is being delivered as it should be, we are good to go on the closing. If it's not, we need to notify the lawyers and let them know that there's this issue came up and we need to negotiate a solution. So stove's not working. Is it just because the gas company is not there, hasn't turned on? Do we need to put some money in escrow to get this sorted? Do we have to get a credit because the awning isn't working? That's a real thing that's happening right now. So just making sure at the final walkthrough that everything is copacetic and you're going to be ready to move in right away. If Lisa was here, she'd be telling you guys and reminding you not to schedule your movers. Things can change. Lots of things can go out of sorts, and like people are so eager because they want to move in, they schedule their movers and they have to move it 5 times because there's been this kink where the wire didn't come through and they're not giving us the keys until the wire hits. So do not schedule your movers for the day of your closing. Probably not the day after, just in case. It depends on really some other variables, but you should not be moving and closing on the same day. It is a bad practice. And then you get to the closing table. Hopefully all the money comes through and you get the keys and then you can move in. As long as the building or co-op board doesn't have rules about what days you can and can't move in, and that you have told them so that you could reserve the elevator, that you could possibly only use one of the elevators, and they need to put the pads on the wall. There's lots of things that you'll learn about to live into a building that has these sort of rules. You want to make sure you understand them before you go ahead and get things going. Because if you move in on a Saturday and they have no Saturday or Sunday move-ins and your moving truck shows up, you're not going to leave a good impression with the super or doorman and your neighbors for not following the rules on day one. So, but you close, and congratulations. And now you are a New York City homeowner owning real property, condo, or stakes in a co-op if you bought in the co-op. And you did it all with your team of experts that helped guide you along the way and make sure that your best interests were always coming first, and we were looking out for you so that you found the property that you want to live in here. Congratulations. So in conclusion, things I didn't review earlier. We have that library of resources that there's in Basecamp, which is our project management tool that you will have access to if you work with us. We set up your search in RealtyMX, which is the backend database that's different than StreetEasy. And you can schedule a call with me or Rashida or Lisa to talk about your specific situation. And you will get emailed a copy of this presentation, as well as our home buying handbook. And that is the end of our session. I want to thank my Farah for keeping track of everything. And she has also some questions that are in the chat that I'm going to go over now. And she's going to put a link in for scheduling an appointment if you guys are ready to do that. We are always ready to talk to anybody at any point. If you have this as something you're going to do in the next 3, 5, 10 years, no point in not starting to talk right away to discuss these things. So the first question I got was, should you apply for a mortgage with multiple mortgages to get pre-approved for multiple mortgages? So the thing that Lisa would go over with you guys is that you should probably be speaking to a mortgage broker who has a variable amount of different products available to you, not just one product. If you're calling Chase, they usually only have Chase products. If you're calling Bank of America, they only have Bank of America products. You want to make sure you're calling a mortgage broker that has access to all of these different banks' products so that you can get the most competitive rate. Most brokers can get you this same competitive rate. It's important that Lisa would go over it, the turn times, making sure that their office has good turn times, making sure they're closing and doing underwriting quickly to get you into that 30 or 45-day commitment letter that you need. And I think that covers that question, right? Any other questions besides the one about pre-approvals? Okay, well, if that's it, then I'll let you guys reach out with any specific questions that you have. Thank you so much, Rashida, and everybody for joining us tonight on this wet, cold evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.